I'll talk about almost reflects my own life in all the years that I've spent, especially in academic life, that I found in the various economics departments and finance departments of various universities that I taught in, that I found myself out on a limb many times because my view on things was oftentimes out of alignment with the orthodoxy. At the same time, I think things are moving towards it now, so that's why I put this up as a starting. And the other thing I often do when before teaching a class or a program, and I think I showed something like this in Louvain, is I just want to show you, before we talk about the language, I want to talk about what I noticed is happening in terms of business and society and life and whatever. And as you can see up at the top, I know a lot of people use terms like sustainability, and it's sort of used so loosely nowadays. You know, everything is sort of sustainable. You only have to look at company websites to see that everybody now every company has a sustainable mission statement. Now, God knows whether they adhere to it or believe in it or not. But my own view is that, and this will give you some sort of context for my talk, is that sustainability, oftentimes there's too much emphasis on, that's the wrong way of putting it. It's not that it's too much emphasis on the environment, but there's an assumption that sustainability is about just the environment or about carbon footprints or biodiversity. It is all those things, but I actually think that definition I put up there is about flourishing. Us as humans, the great hunger by young people, I find, is that thing I'm calling meaning or purpose, or that inner thing. And as I said, I've taught and set up programs in finance over the years, and 30 or 40 years ago, I was never that happy teaching it, even though I was very happy teaching it, but I never really believed in it. If there's one thing you learn at the end of your life, or when you see your days getting shorter, is the fact that you sort of go in this inner journey more, and you become more authentic, to use a word I'm going to use. So you see at the bottom I talked about shallow roots. So companies don't need to be embedded in many ways, and we hear these phrases all the time, and a lot of government programs are based in terms of stimulating business are based on scaling up. You know, it's all about, is it scalable? You know, when maybe you can have a good company without being scalable, with 50 people employed and people having good jobs, permanent jobs, etc. So if you look at the right-hand side, I'm talking about, and I put arrows showing it because, and I call it the regenerative age. A lot of people on the right-hand side, how do they talk about their employees being motivated and being driven by something internal, and yet the challenge is oftentimes that the employees don't find that because they're in a world where it is based on the left-hand side. So if you look more, and I won't spend more time on this, going down, so instead of seeing a business as a machine and a structure, it's better to think of it as a living organism. You'll notice down in that I'm talking about feelings and emotions and empathy and relationships. Things are very fuzzy compared to the one on the left, which is dogmatic and structured, and you can put a number on it. Whereas on the right-hand side is feelings, emotions, empathy, words like caring, interdependence, etc. And down at the bottom, I mean, the stuff I've written over the last few years, we wrote a book on real value by comparing, for example, money value, this narrow thing about the value of something being captured by the number, by the stock price or the price of an entity, that it doesn't capture the real value of something, which is far broader than that. Oftentimes, we all know that, and there are people here I know today in community development, that the value oftentimes is far richer and broader. The real thing that I'm trying to capture is that the old way of thinking was, if you focused on making money, it is an old way of thinking, whereas you focus on the purpose of something and you make money. So it's far better by focusing on having something deeper driving you, and you end up actually financially better off in general. That may not be true again about the Amazons of this world, who focus on just making money, and they make a hell of a lot of it. But if you focus on something richer and deeper, you actually end up various other things come into play like trust and relationships that lead you to actually financially be better off. And that's a new way of thinking. And in many ways, well, I put these as two columns that are kind of, in many ways, in opposition to each other. In many ways, it's actually not about opposition. It's like your brain is bringing the whole halves of the brain together. So you create wholeness or integrity. So I wanted to define place and sense of place. And the best way of looking at place is it's nature and culture in some way put together. It's not space. Space, as I put up there, is what you travel through. Place is where you stop. It has this meaning. Again, that word that I keep on going through. And a sense of place then is obviously your connection with it. Authenticity is this wonderful word which has lots of different meanings. It can mean real, genuine, not a fake, not a copy. But it's actually deeper than that. It's about doing something because you want to be independent. It's not just being sort of doing what everybody else says or believes. You believe something because you're authentic, if you will. But there's even a deeper definition. They're all integrated in some way. I actually think the best way of looking at authentic is that somehow it emerges from some root of some sort. That, as I put it there, emerging from something or someone's origins. So to be authentic, I think, is to reflect on who you are, where you come from, who are you? You know, and authentic living then coming out of that is being true to yourself, being not driven by what others believe. And what I'm going to show, or what I've tried to kind of talk about today, is that having a deep sense of place, because it nurtures that inner meaning and purpose, also does lead to an authentic way of living. And the way we've this was the book I wrote a few years ago with a couple of others, about real value. But if you look at the logic of what I'm talking about today, place-based ventures, that is ventures that are rooted in a particular place, like for example, Letterkenny, etc. And I think that is I won't go into this indeed, but I know that from my time teaching in universities in Dublin, for example, a lot of the flawed thinking that comes from the centre, or Dublin itself, is imposed on what they see as other places in Ireland. I think it's deeply flawed because the great opportunity is to be, in many ways, not in the metropolis, in the way I'm describing it here, and that you should be taking advantage of your own resources that are rooted in your own place, that are unique and not easily copied, etc. But the logic of what I'm talking about today is, if you look at what I just said, rootedness and connectedness is the base of what I do. That leads to some sort of purpose, of some sort of meaning, and it's out of that you create businesses that create value. I put on the left-hand side various words in different languages, like being Delicate's Old Irish, to do with the lore of place names. As I was driving down here last night, I was thinking like all the different names of places that you see in the Irish language make sense, make meaning, if you will. In English they mean nothing. They're gobbledygook a lot of the time. And again, the impact of that on us as human beings, I think, is not studied enough. But various other languages, they don't mean the same thing. Like in Latin, for example, genius loci is about a sense of place. You have dwelling in English, etc., and various other languages. And so what I'm trying to show here is that in a globalized world, which we're all in now, that ducus, as I put it there, or that word in Irish that's very difficult to translate, it means something like heritage and tradition and a whole bunch of things to do with it. But if you look at the survey by Borbia, the Irish Food Board, it's in equivalent time. I'm not just making up this is the trend that's happening in the marketplace. So people are saying things like, I'm looking for products and brands that are real, authentic and honest. The sort of work they're using. Or down here, the past has to have modern relevance, locality and seasonality become increasingly important, celebrating tradition, or a passion for place. So that's what a lot of people want. So to show examples of that, and the rest of my time is going to be stories, this restaurant, the #1 in the world for many years, New Nordic Cuisine, is based on Nordic cuisine. And if you look at the food, It's not like French cuisine, which old cuisine, or whatever way they describe it. It's simplicity, it's about rootedness, it's about berries, it's about things that are grown locally, it's about eating the place, if you will. And the quote by the owner of it is about falling in love. The reason they became so famous is because people wanted to go to a place where they eat the place. And the tragedy in Ireland, I think, is in many ways that, certainly in food, while we're great at growing food, and we do have some sort of our growing reputation in cuisine, I guess, now. But the point is that when people come over to Ireland from other countries, and they oftentimes are searching to eat the place, they end up having to eat in an Italian restaurant. Nothing wrong with Italian restaurants or Chinese restaurants, but what about giving them allowing them to eat the place? So let's go to Irish. I have I think about 5 or... Let me explain there. Having defined place, and having looked at, let me just see where we are. Having said that, the great opportunity, I think, are for place-based enterprises that are rooted somehow and that are authentic and selling that thing that, as I said, when I taught finance over the years to dealers or investment managers, whatever, the value of something was always captured in the price. Whereas in this kind of stuff, what's obvious to anybody nowadays is that the value is much more in that other thing that is not captured in a number. It's in this feeling or emotion, this idea that what I'm buying means something to me. So if I wear a jacket or eat something, put it into my mouth, that it's not just about getting rid of hunger, it's about how the animals were treated, where the food came from. These emotional things that are captured by the eating process, or the wearing, or going on a vacation somewhere. What does it mean to be in a place that is unique and special and is not the same as anywhere else and is different? It's not better necessarily, but different, which is the great hunger. People are searching for these authentic experiences. To go to a survey that was done by a Mórtas, and I wrote some article in the Irish Independent, Sunday Independent, about it a few months ago. And one of the tragedies, I think, is that because of our colonial past and various other things that are too complicated for me to talk about today, Irish people probably don't see a lot of these resources that we do have as that valuable. When in fact I've just argued that the most valuable things are the things that are different and unique and special and rooted. And so, for example, in the survey with 1,000 people, a very comprehensive survey done by an organisation that does a lot of these types of surveys, you can see the figures that 59% like to see businesses communicating through Irish. I don't have the figures for who don't like it, but it's less than 10%, I can tell you. So, and look at this, 73%, if they see it in Irish, they assume it's local or Irish owned. 73%, and because of that, the thing at the bottom you see is 41%, this is I think absolutely fascinating, 41% are more likely to buy products if they see their Irish is in the marketing or advertising somewhere. And we because I helped them to write the survey questions, 26% will pay more for products and services that use the language. They'll pay more. Think of that for a second, they'll pay more. We use words like a little more or whatever, but they won't pay more. And it's even more for younger people, 36% for young people. And why businesses don't use that is, businesses are constantly, I know small businesses where a lot of people are here today are constantly challenged to open up new possibilities, new markets, cut costs, etc. And here's a business opportunity that's been lost because people aren't taking advantage of something, not because I'm promoting it, or not because Barbara or Leonra, but because it makes business sense. I'm not saying you should do things just for making money, as I've argued from the time I opened my mouth today. But, hey, why not have purpose and meaning and also make lots of money? And there's loads of examples to finish off. This one I've used, one book I wrote a few years ago, we used this as the main chapter, and we should have written the whole book about it because the whole story is in this company on Inishman. They sell authenticity, they're competing against Italian top brands, and it's the way, and they're selling in places like Saks Fifth Avenue, top boutiques in the States, in Japan for God's sake. And what the Japanese are buying it, they don't know that it's an island where people speak Irish, but what they're buying is independence. They're buying, the people in Japan love the idea that these people are living in an island and creating fashion ideas or fashion or garments, compete against top Italian companies, where that spirit is what the person is buying. So they're prepared to pay 300 or 400 euros for a jacket that somebody like me would go to Marks and Spencer's and pay 30 or 40 because I don't need meaning in the jacket, I just need cheapness and warmth. But there are people who buy for meaning, and there's a huge market, and this company has been able to take advantage of it. So you can see what the owner, the person who set it up said. We don't just sell knitwear, we sell design and place. In the fashion world, the thought nowadays about quality, heritage and tradition. And they always have phrases in Irish. If you go to the website, it's bilingual, etc. And here's a restaurant in Connemara. Again, I've seen examples of this where it captures the idea that it's local food by having the menu bilingual. And then there's more stories like Paul Galvin, the Kerry footballer. And then I took some other examples. Macroom buffalo cheese. I mean, they're using buffalo cheese. But look at the website. They have it in Irish. You can click on Irish and English. And then down at the bottom is a Canadian company. Strangely enough, I mean, they are selling, they sell their products, they're some sort of foodie kind of thing, all over the world. But because they're from Canada, they're used to putting it in French and English. And so when they came to Ireland, I think it's in Super Value or somewhere, that you find these types of products, you find the label or the packaging is bilingual. No big deal. Again, like a lot of foreigners understand stuff that the Irish people themselves don't understand at all. And to finish off by saying, what I've just been talking about at a global level, I looked at this survey, which was done by an English company, nothing to do with Irish, nothing to do with Irish language in itself. But this person contacted me actually, the person who did this study from after I wrote that article with some independent, and said, you know, you might be interested in our survey where we looked at all these different countries around the world. And I know you can't read these things, but those percentages, 96, 93, they're all to do with people in different countries who want to see products in their own languages. Now I know Irish in Ireland is very different in many ways. We all realise that because English is so prevalent and dominant. But the lesson is very clear that people want to see things that mean something to them. That it captures something, it means something, and out of that there is activity or purchase or whatever. So I took this quote from it: cultural insight and local languages are increasingly important for various across the market. So by doing something like that, you identify that you are different. That 72% at the bottom, it says 72% are proud of their national identity, history and culture. That is the big movement that is happening. And I wrote this thing in the Irish Times, later in the Irish Times, to end it all. I know you can't read it, but let me tell you why I did it. I've spent the day, or this half hour, or whatever I've been talking about labels or brands or names of companies, but there's a deeper thing than that. The old way of thinking about innovation, which is still very dominant in public policy in Ireland, which is spend lots of money on R&D, and out of that will come innovation. I'm not saying that you won't get new products through that, etc. But that's not where most of the innovation occurs. Innovation occurs because of relationships, people talking to each other, interacting with each other, reflecting on themselves and on others. And what I was trying to show in this piece, complaining about Clinton O'Toole, who had said something about suggesting, he was talking about indigenous industry in Ireland, saying that if we're doubling R&D spending, that will lead to more innovation. And as I'll just read out a couple of lines. I said, however, real innovation brings far more on qualitative factors such as belonging, rootedness, and a sense of place than expenditures on scientific research per se. So it's not that I'm complaining about payments on science and technology. I'm saying that when people are interacting with each other in a multilingual environment where they have to think about who they are and who the other person is, the old way of thinking, that way that I described at the beginning, that factory model, the industrial age model is, oh my God, they're not going to understand it, so therefore there won't be any creativity in it, because that's flawed. What people in a multilingual globalized world, the idea of creating a milieu and a community where people interact and oftentimes don't understand what the other person is saying or coming from is actually very healthy in many ways. It stimulates something. It stimulates the brain. It stimulates the person to think about, why are they talking this way? Why are they coming from that point of view? And so the old way is to say, make the person's life simple. Don't complicate it. When it's obvious, take tourism, for example. The old way of thinking about tourism was that you put people in a tour bus and they travelled around the country and looked out the windows. That's an old way of thinking. There's still people who do that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But the new way of thinking about tourism is people want experiences. They want to explore how people live in a country. They want a warm bath or a nice bath and a warm shower. But after that, they want to discover what's going on in this place. They want to be confident. They want to explore. They want to be a bit confused. So there's nothing wrong with being a bit confused. This idea that I think it's an old way of thinking that we must make foreigners or visitors or people who mightn't have Irish, we must, they won't understand. It's flawed, in my view, and the evidence, and that's what I was trying to show at the bottom there. Tradition is not a dead artifact, but a living and valuable resource for innovation. It offers people an opportunity to reflect on their place in the world, harnesses the spirit of self-discovery, and thereby an innovative mindset. It is a tragedy that a lack of appreciation of our distinctive resources continues to retard our innovation potential. In my view, policy makers need to radically change that point out. And you'll notice here on the right from a book I read recently, communities of practice, which is what we're talking about when it comes to innovation and creativity. The generation of both knowledge and operating. So operating within a single language is actually not as healthy for innovation as being in an environment, as he points out, we'd be better off if they facilitated linguistic diversity in their operations. In many ways, and this is my final thought, in many ways, Irish, I know this is where I disagree oftentimes with policymakers. If you can create an environment where Irish is competing with other languages, once it's like a child who, if you don't nurture him or her, they will die if you don't sustain. But if you create an environment where they have to exercise, they have to compete up to a point, you actually build a healthier child in that case, but you also help build, when it comes to languages, healthier languages. So the real challenge is how do you create multilingual environments? Oftentimes Irish is competing against English, and because English is so dominant, it gets so marginalised, and I understand and I'm a great supporter of ways in which Irish is nurtured. But what I'm talking about here is that to create innovative environments in this country, now that we have so many people from other countries with different languages, if Irish was supported properly, and there was a real commitment that we should have to it, we would have a situation where the language was an integral part of creativity, innovation. Anytime the government writes anything about innovation, it should be having the Irish language central. But again, as somebody said to me not too long ago, I've been listening to you for 20 or 30 years. Is anybody else listening to you? Well, I'm really honoured that you listen to me. But, you can see I finished off with this quote from a Dutch philosopher about a language being much more than just talking and communicating. It's about, as he puts it there, it's about being. It's a way of being in the world. And we're human beings. So we should live as human beings. And what we crave is being human. We're not machines, we're human beings. And the big mistake that is made in this country is to see the language, the Irish language, this incredibly valuable resource, as just something that is for communicating. It is that, but it's much more than that. It's about who we are, where we've come from, how we live, and how we will live in the future.